They took my daughters at 3:47 in the afternoon. I know because the courtroom clock made this wet clicking sound every time the minute hand moved, and I'd been counting clicks since Judge Helen Carter opened her mouth. 47 clicks. 47 opportunities for her to stop speaking and choose mercy. She used every single one to explain why I wasn't fit to raise the children I'd kept alive for 13 years. The paper she signed was cream-colored. Heavy stock. The kind that costs extra. I watched her fountain pen scratch across it in these long, deliberate strokes, the ink so dark it looked wet even after it dried. She dotted the final period with this tiny flourish, like she was finishing a love letter instead of terminating my rights to a baby I hadn't even birthed yet. My hands went to my belly without me telling them to. 7 months along. The baby kicked. Hard. Like she knew. Maya screamed when the social worker reached for her. Not cried. Screamed. This raw animal sound that bounced off the wood paneling and made everyone in the room flinch except Judge Carter. She just adjusted her glasses and kept talking. Something about advanced maternal age. Something about medical noncompliance. Something about emotional volatility. The words blurred together, but Maya's scream stayed sharp. Cut through everything else. Still cutting. Zoe didn't scream. Zoe never screamed. She just looked at me with these huge dry eyes and mouthed something I couldn't read. Then Tarek put his hand on her shoulder and she stopped trying. That's what killed me. Not the screaming. The stopping. Right now, where are you listening from? That chair you're in, that room you trust, do you feel the temperature shift when Betrayal walks in wearing a suit? I felt it too. That cold draft that comes from nowhere, settles into your bones before you understand what it means. The courtroom was 72 degrees. I know because there was a digital thermostat right above the judge's bench, and I stared at it while she spoke so I wouldn't have to see her face. But my skin prickled like I was standing in a freezer. That's how I knew. Before she even finished the sentence. Before Maya screamed. Before Zoe stopped fighting. The ledger was already open. Stay with me. Because what happens next, I promise you, you won't be able to look away. And you won't want to. The reporters found me on the courthouse steps. 6 of them. Maybe 7. They moved like a single organism, cameras first, questions trailing behind. Is it true you're 45? Did you plan this pregnancy? Are you concerned about the risks? That last one came from a woman in a red blazer who couldn't have been older than 25. Her microphone had a foam cover shaped like a tiny windscreen. I wanted to take it off and see if her questions would blow away. Tarek gave them a statement. He'd written it on his phone during the hearing. I know because I heard him typing while Judge Carter read the verdict. Soft taps against glass. He stood on the top step, right where the light hit him best, and said he supported the court's decision. Said it came from a place of concern. Said he hoped I'd get the help I needed. His voice did this thing it always did when he talked to white people, got softer and rounder, lost all its edges. The reporters ate it up. One of them called him brave. I walked past them without stopping. Didn't run. Running would have looked guilty. I just walked like I had somewhere to be, like I wasn't a woman whose children had just been legally kidnapped by a system that couldn't tell the difference between protection and control. My phone buzzed in my coat pocket. 3 times. I didn't check it. I already knew. The bus stop was 2 blocks from the courthouse. I'd taken that route 100 times, back when I cleaned offices downtown and my shift ended at midnight. Back when Zoe was a baby strapped to my chest and I had to time the transfers perfectly, or we'd be standing on a dark corner at 1 in the morning waiting for a bus that might not come. I knew every crack in the sidewalk. Every corner where the streetlights didn't quite reach. Every place where safety thinned out and you had to walk faster without looking like you were afraid. I sat on the bench and checked my phone. 7 texts from Tarek. The first one said he was sending a car for the girls. The second one said not to make it ugly. The others were variations on the same theme. Threats dressed up as concern. I deleted them without reading past the first line. The 8th text wasn't from Tarek. It was from the school nurse. Zoe had an asthma attack during gym class. Panic-induced. She'd been begging for me. They couldn't get her to calm down until they promised to call. But when they tried my number, I was in court. Phone off. Unavailable. The nurse said Zoe was stable now but asked if I could come by after dismissal. Just to reassure her. I couldn't go. If I showed up at that school, if I so much as stepped on the property, Tarek would call it a violation. Judge Carter had been very clear. No contact until a supervised visitation schedule was established. No exceptions. Not even for asthma attacks. Not even for children who couldn't breathe because their mother had been surgically removed from their lives without anesthesia. I turned off my phone and walked to Aunt Cora's house. She was waiting on the porch when I got there. Didn't ask questions. Just opened the screen door and let me in. Her house smelled like cedar and frying oil and this specific brand of incense she ordered from a botanica in Miami. The living room was dark, curtains drawn, one lamp burning in the corner. She pointed to the couch. I sat. She brought me sweet tea in a mason jar with so much sugar it was practically syrup. I drank it without tasting it. We have a rule in my family. Women don't cry in front of each other unless the crying is going to change something. If it's not going to change anything, you save it for when you're alone, so at least it's not wasted. I wasn't crying. Aunt Cora wasn't asking me to. We just sat there, her in the recliner, me on the couch, the baby doing gymnastics against my ribs like she was trying to kick her way out early and fix everything herself. Aunt Cora spoke first. She said, "They did this to your grandmother." Different words, same result. Said the state has a long memory when it comes to black women's bodies. Said they don't forget a womb they think they own. She didn't ask me what I was going to do. She told me. She said, "You run, baby. You run and you don't stop until you're somewhere they can't find you. Somewhere they can't take her to." I'd been planning it for 3 weeks. Since the custody hearing date got set. Since I realized Tarek wasn't going to fight for me, he was going to fight against me. I'd been skimming $20 here, $40 there from the grocery money, from the cleaning jobs I'd picked up under the table. I'd been hiding it in an envelope taped to the back of the bathroom mirror, the one place Tarek never looked because he didn't clean and didn't think about who did. By the time Judge Carter signed that cream-colored paper, I had $830. Not enough to start over. Enough to disappear. Aunt Cora gave me 3 things. A burner phone with 1 number programmed in. A .38 revolver that had belonged to her second husband, the one who died before I was born. And a name. Mama Odette. She lived in rural Georgia, 2 hours south of nowhere, in a house that didn't show up on GPS. She took in women who were running. No questions. No judgment. No records. Aunt Cora said Odette would know what to do. Said she'd kept girls alive before when the system wanted them dead. Said I should leave tonight. I asked about Zoe and Maya. Asked if running made me the kind of mother Judge Carter said I was. Aunt Cora looked at me like I'd just said the dumbest thing she'd ever heard. She said, "Baby, they already decided what kind of mother you are. Staying won't change their minds. It'll just make it easier for them to take the next one." I left at 2 in the morning. Didn't pack much. 1 duffel bag. Clothes that didn't stand out. The envelope of cash. The burner phone. The .38. Wrapped in a dish towel at the bottom of the bag where it wouldn't shift around and make noise. I walked 6 blocks to the Greyhound station and bought a ticket to Atlanta with cash. The clerk didn't ask questions. Didn't look at my face long enough to remember it. Just printed the ticket and told me the bus left at 4:15. I sat in the bathroom for 2 hours. Not because I needed to. Because the waiting area had cameras and I didn't want anyone counting how long I'd been there. The bathroom mirror was cracked down the middle, splitting my reflection into 2 unequal pieces. The left side looked tired. The right side looked feral. I washed my face with hand soap that smelled like fake flowers and tried to decide which side was telling the truth. The bus was half empty. I took a seat in the back next to the window where I could see anyone coming before they saw me. Most of the passengers were asleep within 20 minutes. I didn't sleep. I watched the highway roll past, streetlights smearing into long orange streaks, and thought about the last time I'd been on a Greyhound. I was 15. Pregnant with Zoe. Running from a different kind of danger. The system found me then too. Put me in a group home. Told me I was too young to make decisions about my own body. Told me I needed to think about what was best for the baby. I thought the best thing for the baby was having a mother who wanted her. They disagreed. They made me participate in something they called a wellness program. Mandatory counseling. Mandatory nutrition classes. Mandatory everything except the one thing I actually needed, which was to be left alone. They took so much blood I started to think they were looking for something I didn't know I had. Every week a new test. Every week a new form to sign. I signed them because I was 15 and scared and didn't know I could say no. I didn't find out what I'd actually agreed to until years later. Until it was too late to undo it. The bus stopped in Macon just after dawn. I got off to stretch and use the bathroom, There was a coffee shop across the street, one of those chain places that looks identical no matter where you are. I bought a bottle of water and a banana and stood outside eating while I watched the parking lot. That's when I saw it. A black SUV with tinted windows, parked 3 spaces from the bus, engine running. It hadn't been there when we arrived. The driver didn't get out. Didn't move. Just sat there. Watching. I got back on the bus without finishing the banana. Sat in the same seat. Watched the SUV through the window. It stayed in the parking lot until we pulled away, then merged into traffic 4 cars behind us. I counted exits. It followed for 3. Then it dropped back and disappeared. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was Tarek. Maybe it was someone else. I didn't wait to find out. I got off in a town I didn't know the name of. Small. The kind of place where the bus station is just a bench with a faded route map stapled to a telephone pole. I called the number Aunt Cora had given me. It rang 6 times. I thought I was going to get voicemail. Then a voice answered. Warm. Familiar even though I'd never heard it before. She said, "You Cora's niece?" I said yes. She said, "Stay where you are. I'll come to you." Mama Odette drove a pickup truck that was more rust than paint. She was older than I expected. 70 maybe. Maybe more. Hair wrapped in a scarf, hands strong on the wheel, eyes that saw through you without judgment. She didn't ask my name. Didn't ask why I was running. Just told me to get in and keep my head down until we cleared the county line. Her house sat at the end of a dirt road that wound through pine trees so thick you couldn't see the sky. No mailbox. No street number. No sign that anyone lived there at all unless you knew where to look. The house itself was small. 2 bedrooms. 1 bathroom. A kitchen that smelled like sage and cornbread. She pointed to the back room and told me I could stay as long as I needed. Said I wasn't the first and wouldn't be the last. Said the state liked to pretend it was protecting children, but mostly it was just feeding itself. I stayed in that room for 3 days. Didn't go outside. Didn't turn on the burner phone. Didn't do anything except sleep and eat the food Mama Odette brought me and feel the baby kick. On the 3rd day the contractions started. Not labor. Just my body practicing. Tightening and releasing. A warning. A countdown. The baby was coming whether the world was ready or not. On the 4th day Mama Odette knocked on my door and told me someone had been asking about me. Not police. Not family. Someone else. Corporate, she said. Like I was a missing product instead of a person. She said they'd been to 3 houses on the network before hers, asking questions, showing a picture. My driver's license photo. The one where I'm smiling because the DMV lady told me to, even though I didn't feel like it. Mama Odette said she turned them away. Told them she didn't know anyone by that name. But she said they'd be back. Said I needed to decide what I was going to do. I called Detective Ray Valdez from the burner phone. I didn't know him. Didn't know if I could trust him. But Aunt Cora had given me his number along with Mama Odette's. Said he was one of the good ones. Said he'd looked into my case once before years ago when I was still just a file number in a system that ate girls like me for breakfast. I didn't know what he'd found. Didn't know if it mattered. But I was out of options and the baby was running out of time. He answered on the 2nd ring. I told him who I was. Told him where I'd been. Told him what Judge Carter had done. He didn't interrupt. Didn't ask stupid questions. Just listened. When I finished he was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I remember you. Case number 4482. You were 15. Pregnant." The file disappeared after 6 months. I always wondered why. I asked him what he meant. He said the case had been flagged for further investigation. Something about irregular blood work. Something about a consent form that didn't match the minor waiver. But before he could follow up, the file got sealed. Judicial order. Judge Helen Carter. He tried to access it twice over the years. Both times he got shut down. He said he'd thought it was just bureaucratic corruption. Now he wasn't sure. I asked him what he thought it was instead. He said he didn't know yet. But he said he'd find out. Said he'd meet me at Mama Odette's house in 2 days. Said not to go anywhere until then. Said to keep the gun close. I hung up and went back to the room. The contractions were coming more frequently now. Still not regular. Still not labor. But closer. I could feel it. The baby knew something I didn't. She was getting ready. You're still here. That means you felt the click too. That moment when the world fractures and you can't unsee the cracks. When the signature you trusted turns out to be counterfeit. When the hand you held turns out to be the one holding the knife. If you felt that shift in your chest, if your hands just tighten without you telling them to, drop a like right now. Let me know you're watching. Let me know you understand what's coming. Because the ledger needs witnesses. And what happens next will change how you check every signature for the rest of your life. Valdez didn't make it in 2 days. Tarek did. I heard the truck before I saw it. Different engine sound. Louder. Angrier. Mama Odette heard it too. She came to my room and told me to get up. Told me to take the bag and the gun and go out the back. Told me there was a path through the woods that led to an old railroad bridge over the Oconee River. Told me to follow it and don't stop. Told me she'd stall them as long as she could. I didn't ask how she knew it was them. Didn't ask how she knew what to do. Women like Mama Odette don't survive by asking questions. They survive by knowing the answers before the questions get asked. I went out the back door as the truck pulled into the front drive. Took the path she'd described, barely visible through the underbrush, marked with stones that I only noticed because she told me to look. The baby was heavy. My back screamed with every step. The contractions were coming every 10 minutes now. Still not labor. But close enough that I could feel the difference. Close enough that I knew I was running out of time. I heard voices behind me. Tarek's voice. Another man's voice I didn't recognize. Mama Odette's voice, calm and steady, telling them I wasn't there. Telling them they had the wrong house. Telling them to leave before she called the sheriff. They didn't leave. I heard a door slam. Heard footsteps on the porch. Heard Tarek say my name like it was a question he already knew the answer to. I ran. The woods were thick. Pine needles and kudzu and roots that reached up to trip you if you weren't careful. I wasn't careful. I was fast. Fast as a woman 7 months pregnant with a duffel bag and a gun could be. Which wasn't fast enough. I heard them behind me. Crashing through the underbrush. Calling my name. Getting closer. The bridge appeared through the trees like a skeleton. Old railroad bridge, long since abandoned, tracks pulled up and sold for scrap. Just the frame left. Wooden planks rotting through in places, gaps big enough to fall through if you stepped wrong. The Oconee River below, slow and dark and cold. Early dawn mist rising off the water. I stepped onto the bridge and kept walking. Tarek came out of the trees behind me. Not alone. His cousin Deshaun was with him. Bigger than Tarek. Meaner. The kind of man who got paid to retrieve things that didn't want to be retrieved. Tarek called my name. I didn't stop. He called it again, louder this time, with an edge that wasn't concern and wasn't love. It was ownership. He was calling for something he believed belonged to him. I stopped in the middle of the bridge and turned around. Put the duffel bag down. Felt the weight of the .38 inside it. Didn't reach for it yet. Not yet. I asked him what he wanted. He said he wanted to take me home. Said the girls were asking for me. Said I was making everything harder than it needed to be. Said if I just came back with him we could work it out. We could fix this. I asked him how he found me. He didn't answer. Just looked at Deshaun. Deshaun smiled. Not a friendly smile. A smile that said he was good at finding things. A smile that said I should have run farther. That's when Valdez came out of the trees on the other side of the bridge. Gun drawn. Not pointed at me. Pointed at Deshaun. He told everyone to stay calm. Told everyone to put their hands where he could see them. Told Tarek he was making a mistake. Tarek said the only mistake was me running. Said I was unstable. Said I was dangerous. Said I needed help. Valdez said she's not the one who needs help. He told me he'd been digging. Told me he'd found things. Told me Judge Carter had ordered a rush DNA test on me and the baby. Told me the results came back 3 days ago. Told me they said something I wasn't going to want to hear. I asked him what they said. He looked at me like he was deciding whether to rip off the bandage fast or slow. Then he said it. Said the test showed I wasn't the biological mother. Said the baby I was carrying wasn't mine. Not genetically. Said the records from when I was 15 had been unsealed. Said I'd been part of a program. A program I didn't remember agreeing to. A program that used girls like me as vessels. I felt the ground tilt. Felt my knees trying to buckle. The baby kicked. Hard. Like she was arguing. Like she was saying, I'm yours, don't listen to them, I'm yours. I put my hand on my belly and felt her moving under my palm. 7 months of her. 7 months of her hiccups and her stretches and her late-night acrobatics. 7 months of her responding to my voice and my heartbeat in my hands. They were trying to tell me she wasn't mine. They were trying to tell me my body was a lie. Valdez kept talking. Said Judge Carter had been involved in cases like this before. Said there was a network. Said girls got recruited through state programs. Got told they were participating in wellness initiatives. Got told the blood tests were routine. Got told the consent forms were just paperwork. Got told it was temporary. Got told they'd be compensated. Got told a lot of things that turned out to be different things once the lawyers translated. He said some of the girls knew. Some of them didn't. Some of them signed up willingly, desperate for money or a way out. Some of them got manipulated. Some of them got coerced. Some of them never found out at all. Just carried babies to term and handed them over and got told they were doing something noble. Got told they were helping families. Got told they were heroes. He said I was one of the ones who wasn't supposed to know. Said the pregnancy had been terminated at 20 weeks. Said the records showed a miscarriage. But he'd found something else. A secondary file. A transfer record. Something about genetic material. Something about storage. Something about a client who paid extra for specific traits. But healthy. No family history of genetic disease. Young enough that the eggs were still good. I asked him if he was telling me someone bought my eggs when I was 15 and I didn't know it. He said that was one way to put it. Said the program called it donation. Said the consent form I'd signed at 15, the one I didn't remember, gave them rights to harvest and store. Said there was a clause about future use. Said the clause was buried in legal language that would have taken a lawyer to decode. Said I'd been alone in a room with a caseworker who told me it was just standard medical authorization. Said I'd signed because I thought I had to. He said the baby I was carrying now was mine. Genetically. But not from this pregnancy. From that one. The one I had at 15. The one I thought I lost. The one the state took and stored and sold to the highest bidder. He said someone had paid to have my eggs implanted in me 30 years later. Said they'd waited until I was old enough that a judge would find me unfit. Old enough that they could claim I was a danger. Old enough that when they took the baby no one would question it. I asked him who. He said he didn't know yet. Said the client files were sealed tighter than the case records. But he said Judge Carter knew. Said she'd been signing off on these arrangements for years. Said she got paid. Not directly. Through a foundation. Through grants. Through speaking fees at conferences where she talked about protecting children and everyone applauded. Tarek was staring at me like I was a stranger. Like he'd just realized he didn't know who he'd been sleeping next to for 13 years. I asked him if he knew. He shook his head. Said he didn't. Said he'd just been trying to do what was right. Said the lawyer told him I was having a breakdown. Said the lawyer told him the pregnancy was high risk. Said the lawyer told him the court was trying to help. I asked him who paid for the lawyer. He didn't answer. Deshaun was getting restless. Kept looking at Valdez's gun. Kept looking at me. Kept looking at the duffel bag at my feet like he knew what was in it. Valdez saw it too. Told him not to move. Told him to keep his hands visible. Deshaun said he wasn't doing anything. Said he was just standing there. Said Valdez was making a big deal out of nothing. Valdez said nothing about this was nothing. That's when I heard the car. Black town car. Expensive. The kind that didn't belong on a dirt road in the middle of nowhere. It stopped at the edge of the bridge. The back door opened. Judge Helen Carter stepped out. She was smaller than she looked in court. Older. But she moved with the same authority. The same certainty. Like gravity bent around her instead of the other way around. She walked onto the bridge like she owned it. Like she owned all of us. She was holding a folder. Cream-colored. Heavy stock. The same kind of paper she'd used to take my daughters. She stopped 10 feet away from me. Looked at Valdez. Looked at Tarek. Looked at me. Smiled. Not warm. Not cold. Just factual. Like she was acknowledging a truth everyone already knew. She said, "Miss Johnson, this has gone on long enough." She said the baby I was carrying wasn't mine to keep. Said I'd signed away my rights 30 years ago. Said the law was clear. Said my pregnancy was the result of a legal contract I'd entered into as a minor. Said the fact that I didn't remember signing it didn't make it less binding. Said I'd been compensated. $500. Deposited into an account I'd never accessed. She said I could check if I didn't believe her. I asked her who paid for the implantation. She said that was confidential. I asked her why they used me. She said I had desirable traits. Said the client had been very specific. Wanted a biological connection to the surrogate. Wanted someone who'd proven fertility. Wanted someone who wouldn't ask questions because they didn't know questions needed to be asked. She said I'd been perfect. I asked her what happened to the other girls. The ones in the program. She said most of them were fine. Living normal lives. Some of them even knew what they'd participated in. Some of them were grateful. She said I was the only one making it complicated. The only one who couldn't let go. She said it was a shame. Said I could have had a relationship with my daughters if I'd just cooperated. Said Tariq had been willing to work with her. Said he understood what was best for the family. Tariq made a sound. Not words. Just a sound. Like something inside him had broken. He looked at Judge Carter. Looked at me. Said he didn't know. Said he swore to God he didn't know. Said the lawyer never told him. Said he thought he was helping. I believed him. That was the worst part. I believed him. He was just another tool. Another instrument. Another way for the system to reach into my life and take what it wanted. Judge Carter told me to come with her. Said she had a medical team waiting. Said the baby would be delivered safely. Said I'd be compensated for my time. Said I could even visit if I signed the right paperwork. Said it didn't have to be traumatic. Said I was making it traumatic by resisting. She said I should think about my daughters. Said I could see them again if I cooperated. Said the state could be very generous when people followed the rules. A contraction hit. Hard. Knocked me to my knees. The baby was coming. Not practicing. Not warning. Coming. I felt the pressure. Felt something shift inside me. Felt my body making a decision my brain hadn't caught up to yet. I gasped. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Could only feel. Valdez moved toward me. Desham blocked him. Tariq shouted something I didn't hear. Judge Carter just stood there. Watching. Waiting. Like she had all the time in the world. Like my pain was just another entry in her ledger. Another item to be processed. Another problem to be solved. I slid toward the edge of the bridge. Not on purpose. Just gravity. Just my body giving out. The water below was dark. Cold. I could smell it. Could feel the mist on my face. The baby kicked. One more time. Like she was saying goodbye or hello. Like she was asking me what I was going to do. Like she already knew. If you've made it this far, if you need to see how this ends as badly as I needed to live it, then you belong here. This is what we do. Every week a new ledger entry. A new reckoning. A new signature to verify. A new wrong that demands to be made right. Hit subscribe. Right now. Because stories like this one, they don't come from nowhere. They come from people like us. People who've been betrayed. People who understand that sometimes justice doesn't come from courts or bosses or systems. Sometimes it comes from patience. And precision. And the willingness to wait. Subscribe. Join the witnesses. Because the next reckoning is already being written. And you don't want to miss it. I reached into the duffel bag. Felt the .38 wrapped in the dish towel. Cold metal. Heavy. I pulled it out. Didn't aim it at anyone yet. Just held it. Let everyone see it. Let everyone understand that whatever happened next was going to be my choice. Not theirs. My. Judge Carter didn't flinch. She said, Miss Johnson, pointing a gun at me won't change the law. I said, I'm not pointing it at you yet. She said, you won't shoot me. You're not that kind of person. I said, you took my daughters. You took my body. You took 30 years of my life and turned it into something I didn't consent to. What kind of person do you think that makes me? She didn't answer. Just opened the folder. Pulled out a document. Held it up so I could see. My signature. 15-year-old handwriting. Loopy. Kitten. Trying so hard to look grown. Next to it a notary seal. A date. October 8th. The day I'd signed the papers in the group home. The day the caseworker had told me it was just routine. The day I'd trusted someone who was paid not to care. Judge Carter said, this is binding. This is law. You can run. You can hide. You can point guns. But you can't change what you agreed to. The baby is not yours. She never was. She was always meant for someone else. You were just the vessel. The word hit me harder than the contraction. Like I was a jar. A container. Something hollow that existed only to hold things for other people. Something that could be emptied and refilled and emptied again without anyone asking if it minded. The baby kicked. One last time. And I felt it. Not just the kick. The answer. The thing I'd been looking for since the courtroom. Since the verdict. Since Maya screamed and Zoe stopped trying. I felt what I was going to do. I didn't point the gun at Judge Carter. I pointed it at the folder. At the document. At the signature that didn't belong to me even though it was mine. I said, burn it. She said, excuse me? I said, burn it. Right now. Or I burn this whole bridge and everyone on it. She looked at me like I was insane. Maybe I was. Insane is just another word for a woman who refuses to be a vessel anymore. Valdez said my name. Soft. Careful. The way you talk to someone standing on a ledge. He said, Nia, put the gun down. We can fix this. We can fight this in court. I said, I already fought it in court. I lost. He said, then we appeal. We go higher. We find someone who'll listen. I said, no one's going to listen. You said it yourself. She's been doing this for years. How many appeals do you think made it through? How many girls do you think got their signatures back? He didn't answer. Because he knew. There were no appeals. There were no higher courts. There was just the system. And the system ate girls like me. It had been eating us for generations. It would keep eating us until someone made it stop. Another contraction. Harder. Longer. I bent over. Gasped. Felt something warm between my legs. My water had broken. The baby was coming. Right now. Right here. On a rotting railroad bridge over a river that didn't care who fell into it. Judge Carter took a step forward. I raised the gun. She stopped. He said, Miss Johnson, you need medical attention. You need to come with me. Right now. Or you and the baby will die out here. I said, maybe. But at least we'll die mine. She said, that's not a choice. That's suicide. I said, no. Suicide is letting you take her. Dying out here is just the cost of keeping her. Tark was crying now. Not sobbing. Just tears running down his face. Silent. He said, Nia, please. Think about Zoe. Think about Maya. They need you. I said, they needed me in that courtroom too. Where were you then? He said, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. I said, you didn't ask. That's worse. Deshawn was reaching for something. Valdez saw it. Shouted. Gun up. Aimed at Deshawn's chest. Deshawn froze. Hands half raised. Whatever he'd been reaching for still hidden. The bridge was a geometry problem now. Bagels. Lines of sight. Who could shoot who first? Who would? Who wouldn't? I slid down to the wooden planks. Couldn't stand anymore. The contractions were coming one on top of the other now. No breaks. No rest. Just pressure and pain and the undeniable fact that my body was pushing this baby out whether I was ready or not. I dropped the gun. Not because I wanted to. Because I couldn't hold it and deliver at the same time. It clattered on the wood. Slid toward the edge. Stopped just before falling through a gap. I was in the water before I realized I'd moved. Not all the way. Just halfway. Legs in the river. Torso on the bank. Cold. So cold. But the cold helped. Made the pain sharper. Made me focus. I could feel the baby's head. Crowning. Right now. No time for hospitals or doctors or people who wanted to decide who she belonged to. He was coming. And she was mine. Biology and law and 30-year-old signatures didn't change that. She was mine because I was the one bleeding for her. I was the one tearing for her. I was the one bringing her into a world that had already decided she wasn't mine before she'd even taken her first breath. Judge Carter was talking. I couldn't hear her anymore. Couldn't hear anything except my own heartbeat and the river and something inside me that sounded like screaming but might have been strength. I pushed. Felt the baby move. Pushed again. Felt her slide. One more. One more. And then she was out. In my hands. In the water. Covered in blood and vernix and river water. Silent. For one terrible second she was silent. I pulled her up. Cleared her mouth. Rubbed her chest. Come on. Come on, baby. Come on. And then she screamed. Not crying. Screaming. Loud and furious and alive. The sound echoed off the bridge. Off the trees. Off the water. A sound that said, I'm here. I'm here and you can't take me. I held her against my chest. Felt her warmth. Felt her heartbeat against mine. Felt her tiny fingers curl around my thumb. He was perfect. He was mine. Not because of DNA. Not because of contracts. Not because a judge said so or a client paid for it. Because I just bled her into the world and no one could take that from me. Judge Carter was at the edge of the water now. Looking down at us. She said, Miss Johnson, you need to hand her over. Right now. Before you hurt her. I said, I'm not the one who's going to hurt her. She said, the law is very clear. I said, then the law is wrong. She reached for the baby. I pulled her closer. Wrapped her in my shirt. Stood up. Legs shaking. Blood running down my thighs. Baby in my arms. Screaming. Alive. I looked at Judge Carter. Looked at Tarek. Looked at Deshawn. Looked at Valdez. I said, "You want her? Come get her." Judge Carter nodded at Deshawn. He moved. Fast. Valdez shouted. "Gun up." Deshawn didn't stop. Reached for me. Reached for the baby. I stepped back. Foot on a rotten plank. Cracked. Gave way. I fell. Not all the way. Just down. Into the water. Baby still in my arms. Held above the surface. Screaming. Still screaming. The water was freezing. The current was stronger than I'd thought. It pulled at my legs. Tried to drag me under. I dug my fingers into the bank. Held on. Held the baby up. He had to stay dry. Had to stay warm. Had to stay alive. That was all that mattered. Not me. Not the pain. Not the blood. Just her. Valdez was in the water now. Wading toward me. Gun holstered. Hands out. Reaching. He said, "Nia, give her to me. I'll keep her safe." "I promise." I said, "You can't promise that." He said, "I can try." I said, "Trying isn't enough." He said, "It's all I have." I looked at him. Really looked. Saw the exhaustion. The guilt. The weight of every case he'd failed to solve. Every file he'd been blocked from accessing. Every girl he couldn't save. He wasn't the enemy. He was just another person trapped in a system that ground people down until they forgot what they were fighting for. I handed him the baby. Not because I trusted him. Because my arms were giving out. Because the cold was seeping into my bones. Because the blood loss was making everything blurry and distant and slow. He took her. Wrapped her in his jacket. Held her like she was made of glass. Looked at me. Said, "I'm going to fix this. I'm going to make it right." I said, "Just keep her alive. That's all I need." I let go of the bank. Let the current take me. Not downstream. Just under. Just for a second. Just to feel what it was like to stop fighting. The water closed over my head. It was quiet under there. Peaceful. No voices. No demands. No signatures or verdicts or judges deciding what my body was for. Just water and silence and the distant sound of the baby screaming above me. I came up gasping. Grabbed the bank again. Pulled myself halfway out. Valdez was climbing back onto the bridge. Baby still in his arms. Still screaming. Still alive. Judge Carter was backing away. Phone in her hand. Calling someone. Calling everyone. Bringing the full weight of the system down on this bridge. On this river. On me. Tarek was sitting on the planks. Head in his hands. Broken. Deshawn was gone. Must have run when the plank broke. When it became clear this wasn't a retrieval job anymore. It was a reckoning. Valdez looked at Judge Carter. Said, "It's over." She said, "It's not over until I say it's over." He said, "You're going to prison." She laughed. Actually laughed. Said, "No, detective. I'm going to retire. With a full pension. And in 5 years no one will remember this. No one will remember her. No one will remember any of them. Because that's how this works. The system protects itself. It always has." He was right. I knew she was right. Even as I lay there bleeding into the river, I knew she was going to walk away from this. Maybe not today. Maybe not tomorrow. But eventually. Because systems don't fall because one girl says no. They fall because enough girls say no at the same time. And we were never at the same time. We were always scattered. Always alone. Always too tired to fight by the time we realized what had been done to us. But I also knew something else. I knew my baby was alive. I knew she was in Valdez's arms instead of Judge Carter's. I knew the system didn't get to decide who she belonged to. Not today. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe next week. Maybe in a courtroom exactly like the one where this started. But not today. I pulled myself all the way out of the water. Stood up. Legs shaking. Vision blurring. Blood still coming. Too much blood. I knew that. Knew I should be scared. But I wasn't. I was just tired. And cold. And done. I looked at my baby. Looked at her tiny face. Her perfect fingers. Her eyes that hadn't opened yet but would. And when they did, she'd see a world that had tried to decide she wasn't mine before she'd even been born. But she'd also see me. Standing. Bleeding. Refusing to be a vessel. Judge Carter made a call. 3 minutes later, sirens. Ambulance. Police. The cavalry. Too late to stop what had already happened. Too late to put the baby back inside me. Too late to pretend this was a legal proceeding instead of a theft that almost worked. They took me to the hospital. Took the baby to a different hospital. Separated us immediately. Standard procedure, they said. For both your safety, they said. I didn't fight. Didn't have the strength. Just let them load me into the ambulance and strap me down and stick needles in my arms and ask questions I didn't answer. I woke up 12 hours later in a room that smelled like disinfectant and recycled air. Aunt Cora was there. Sitting in the chair by the window. She didn't say anything. Just nodded. Like she'd known it would end like this. Like she'd been through versions of this before with other women in our family. Like this was just another entry in a ledger that never balanced. I asked her where the baby was. She said Valdez was fighting to keep her out of state custody. Said he'd filed emergency motions. Said he'd called every contact he had. Said he'd made it his mission. He said it might work. Might not. But at least someone was fighting. I asked her about Judge Carter. She said the judge had given a statement. Said I'd acted erratically. Said I'd endangered the child. Said she'd tried to help but I'd refused. Said the system had done everything right and I'd done everything wrong. Standard script. Standard lies. Standard ending. Except it wasn't the ending. Not yet. 3 days later, Valdez came to see me. He brought a folder. Not cream-colored. Just regular manila. He opened it. Showed me documents. Court orders. Dinatas. The real ones. Not the ones Judge Carter had submitted. The ones he'd had run independently. They showed what I already knew. The baby was mine. Genetically. But more than that. The eggs they'd used had never been stored. They'd been destroyed. The whole story about the program, about the harvesting, about the client, it was fabricated. The baby was mine from this pregnancy. Natural conception. Natural birth. Nothing about it was contracted or planned or sold. He said Judge Carter had lied. Had manufactured evidence. Had used a 30-year-old file from a completely different case to build a narrative that justified the removal. He said she'd done it before. 17 times. 17 women. All of them black. All of them poor. All of them told their babies weren't theirs. All of them told the system knew best. Asked him why. He said money. Adoption fees. Private placements. Clients who paid extra for specific traits and didn't want the paperwork trail of a traditional adoption. He said Judge Carter had been facilitating it for years. Getting paid through foundations and speaking fees and consulting contracts that were really just money laundering. He said she'd gotten sloppy this time. Had reused documents from my old case file without changing enough details. Had assumed no one would check. Had assumed I'd be too broken to fight. I asked him what happened now. He said now we fight. Now we expose her. Now we get my daughters back. Now we make sure she never does this again. He said it wouldn't be easy. Said the system would protect itself. Said there would be lawyers and appeals and delays. But he said we had evidence now. Real evidence. The kind that couldn't be explained away. I looked at him. Said what about the other women? The other 17. He said he was working on it. Said he was reaching out. Said he was trying to find them. Said some of them might not want to be found. Might have built new lives. Might not want to reopen old wounds. But he said they deserved to know the truth. Deserved to know their babies had been stolen, not surrendered. I asked if I could see my daughter. He said not yet. Said she was in foster care. Temporary placement. Said I'd have to go through the system to get her back. Said it was going to take time. But he said he'd make sure I got supervised visits. Said he'd make sure they couldn't move her out of state. Said he'd make sure she knew I was fighting for her. I asked him what her name was. He said they'd registered her as Baby Doe. Hadn't let me name her. Hadn't put me on the birth certificate. Hadn't acknowledged I existed except as a complication. I said her name is Hope. He wrote it down. Aunt Cora took me home 2 days later. Not my home. Tarek's lawyer had already filed for full custody of Zoe and Maya. Had already changed the locks. Had already decided I was too dangerous to be around my own children. I stayed with Aunt Cora. Slept in her guest room. Stared at the ceiling. Waited. The first visit with Hope happened 3 weeks later. Supervised. Social worker present. 30 minutes. They brought her in a car seat. She was bigger already. Eyes open. Dark and clear. looking around like she was trying to figure out where she was. I held her. Felt her weight. Smelled her. That baby smell that's different from anything else. Sweet and clean and alive. She looked at me. Really looked. And I swear she knew. Knew I was the one who'd bled for her. The one who'd held her above the water. The one who'd refused to let them take her without a fight. The social worker said my time was up. Said I had to give her back. I handed her over. Watched them strap her back into the car seat. Watched them carry her away. Watched the door close. Cried for the first time since the courthouse. Not because I was sad. Because I was angry. Because 30 minutes wasn't enough. Would never be enough. But it was more than nothing. And right now more than nothing was all I had. The trial started 4 months later. Not my trial. Judge Carter's. Federal charges. Wire fraud. Conspiracy. Deprivation of rights under color of law. 18 counts. One for each woman she'd done this to. I was number 4. Hope was 18. The prosecution called me to testify. Put me on the stand. Asked me to tell my story. I did. All of it. The courthouse. The verdict. The bridge. The river. The birth. The blood. The screaming. All of it. Judge Carter's lawyer tried to make me look unstable. Tried to say I'd had a mental breakdown. Tried to say I'd endangered my child. Tried to use the gun. Tried to use the river. Tried to use everything. But he couldn't use the DNA tests. Couldn't use the manufactured evidence. Couldn't explain why his client had lied about genetic material that didn't exist. Couldn't explain the 17 other women. Couldn't explain the money trail. Couldn't explain anything except that his client had gotten caught. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Came back with guilty on all counts. Judge Carter didn't cry. Didn't apologize. Just stood there while they read the verdict. Face blank. Like she'd already left her body and what remained was just a shell going through motions. Sentencing was 3 months later. 15 years. Federal prison. No parole. The judge, a different judge, said she'd betrayed her oath. Said she'd weaponized the system against the most vulnerable. Said she'd caused immeasurable harm. Said the sentence reflected the severity of her crimes. Judge Carter was led away in handcuffs. Still didn't cry. Still didn't apologize. Just walked out like she was walking to her car instead of a cell. I got Hope back 6 months after that. Full custody. Reunification plan completed. Home visits passed. Psychological evaluations passed. Every hoop jumped through. Every box checked. They brought her to me on a Tuesday. Different social worker. Kind one. He said, "Congratulations, Mom." Handed me the car seat. Handed me the diaper bag. Handed me my daughter. I sat on Aunt Cora's couch holding Hope. She was 8 months old now. Sitting up. Laughing. Reaching for things. She grabbed my face with both hands. Squeezed. Smiled. That baby smile that's all gums and joy. I cried. Still angry. But also relieved. Also grateful. Also terrified because now I had to figure out how to be her mother in a world that had tried so hard to convince me I wasn't. Zoe and Maya came back 2 months after that. Slower process. More complicated. Tarek fought it. Then didn't. Then dropped the case entirely when his lawyer found out about his connection to Deshawn, who turned out to have a record. Who turned out to be part of the network Judge Carter had used to track and retrieve women who ran. Tarek claimed he didn't know. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he did. Either way he lost. I won. The girls came home. Maya cried when she saw me. Zoe didn't. Just hugged me. Hard. Long. Like she was making sure I was real. Making sure I wasn't going to disappear again. I told them I wasn't going anywhere. Told them we were staying together. Told them about Hope. Told them they had a sister. Told them everything was going to be different now. Better. Harder. But ours. We still live with Aunt Cora. Can't afford anything else yet. I'm working again. Different job. Better pay. Still cleaning, but offices that respect labor laws and don't pay under the table. Saving money. Looking for a place of our own. Somewhere with enough bedrooms. Somewhere with a yard. Somewhere the girls can be loud and messy and safe. Hope is 2 now. Walking. Talking. Says Mama. Says her sister's names. Says no a lot. Strong-willed. Stubborn. Refuses to be told what to do by anyone. I wonder where she got that. Zoe is 15. Maya is 10. They fight. They laugh. They help with hope. They ask questions I don't always know how to answer. Questions about why it happened. Questions about whether it could happen again. Questions about what we do if it does. I tell them the truth. I tell them the system is broken. Tell them it's been broken for a long time. Tell them it breaks on purpose along specific lines targeting specific people. Tell them we have to be careful. Have to be vigilant. Have to document everything and trust nothing and fight for every inch. Tell them it's exhausting. Tell them I'm sorry it has to be this way. Tell them I'm not sorry they're here. Tell them I'd do it all again. The running. The river. The blood. All of it. Because they're mine. Not because a court said so. Not because biology said so. Because I chose them. Every day. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Valdez still calls. Checks in. Updates me on the other cases. Says 6 of the 17 women have come forward. Says they're filing civil suits. Says I should join them. Says we could win. Could get compensation. Could get justice. I tell him I already got justice. Got my daughters back. Got to name Hope. Got to watch her grow. Got to be the mother the system said I wasn't. That's enough. That's everything. But I also tell him I'll think about it. Because maybe it's not just about me anymore. Maybe it's about the women who haven't come forward yet. The women who don't know they were lied to. The women who believed the system when it said their babies weren't theirs. Maybe they need to know. Maybe they need to hear from someone who fought and won. Maybe that's my job now. To be the witness. To keep the ledger open. To make sure no one forgets what was done and who did it and how much it cost. I look at my hands. Relax. The fists I'd been making for years, they're gone. My palms tingle. Like waking up. The ledger never closes. 3 days from now a new story drops. A new reckoning. A new signature to verify. Someone else who thought they'd gotten away with it. And here's what I need you to understand. These stories, they disappear. Algorithms bury them. Feeds refresh. And if you're not subscribed, if you haven't hit that bell, you'll scroll past. You'll miss it. You'll never know what that quiet woman in accounting did when her boss stole her pension. You'll never find out how the father of 3 made his brother-in-law pay for what he did at the family reunion. You'll never hear about the mother who refused to be a vessel and bled into a river to prove it. Your hands remember what it felt like just now. That unclenching. That tingle when justice finally landed. Don't let that fade. Don't let the algorithm decide what you see. Subscribe. Hit the bell. Because 3 days from now the next ledger opens. The next signature gets verified. And the ink is already drying. I'll see you there. Or I won't. That choice is yours. But the ledger? It never waits.